You ever wonder what it's like to slip through the shadows, to walk into a place where you don't belong, take what isn't yours, and vanish before anyone knows you were there? Most people don't. Most people lock their doors at night, set their alarms, and sleep soundly, thinking they're safe. I used to be the reason they were wrong. My name's, well, let's just call me Ghost. That's what they called me in the game. Cops, other thieves, the few who knew I existed. I wasn't born a thief, but I became one, and I was damn good at it. For 15 years I cracked safes, bypassed alarms, and walked away with fortunes while the world slept. I didn't do it for the money, not really. Sure, the cash was nice, mansions, cars, watches that cost more than most people's houses. But it was the rush that kept me going. The feeling of being untouchable, of outsmarting everyone. Until the last job. The one that broke me. I'm telling you this now because I can't keep it inside anymore. It's been 3 years since that night, and I still wake up sweating, hearing the sound of that house creaking, those footsteps coming closer. I'm not the man I was. I don't sleep, don't eat much, don't trust anyone. I'm telling you this because I need you to understand, no matter how good you are, there's always a price. And I paid it in full. It started with a whisper, like most jobs do. I was in a dive bar in Chicago, the kind of place where the lights flicker and the bartender doesn't ask questions. I was nursing a whiskey, blending in, when a guy slid into the booth across from me. Thin, pale, with eyes like he hadn't slept in a decade. He called himself Marcus, though I doubted that was his real name. In my line of work, names are just costumes you wear for the night. Ghost, he said, voice low. I've got something big. Bigger than anything you've done. I didn't bite right away. You don't last long in this game by jumping at every shiny offer. Big usually means risky, and risky means mistakes. But Marcus had a reputation. He wasn't some street hustler. He brokered jobs for people with real money, the kind who don't call the cops when their diamonds go missing. I leaned back, sipped my drink, and let him talk. The Mark was a guy named Victor Grayson, a hedge fund billionaire who lived in a mansion outside the city. Old money, new money, didn't matter, Grayson had it all. Art, jewelry, cash stashed in places banks don't touch. But what Marcus was after wasn't just any score. Grayson had a safe in his basement, custom-built, military-grade, the kind of thing you don't crack without serious planning. Inside? A ledger. Not gold, not diamonds, but a book. Handwritten, encrypted, detailing every dirty deal Grayson had made to build his empire. Offshore accounts, bribes, names of people who'd killed to keep it secret. Marcus's client, some shadowy figure he wouldn't name, wanted that ledger. And they were willing to pay 7 figures for it. Why me? I asked, swirling the whiskey in my glass. Marcus smirked. Because you're the best. And because you don't ask stupid questions. He wasn't wrong. I didn't care who the client was or why they wanted the ledger. I cared about the challenge. A safe like that? It was a puzzle, a test of everything I'd learned over the years. And the payout, $2 million, half upfront, meant I could walk away for good after this. Retire, disappear, maybe find some corner of the world where nobody knew my name. That was the plan, anyway. I spent 3 weeks preparing. Grayson's mansion was a fortress. Motion sensors, pressure plates, cameras with facial recognition, even a private security team that patrolled the grounds. But every system has a weakness. I studied blueprints, hacked into the security company's servers, memorized the guards' schedules. I built a replica of the safe's lock in my apartment and practiced until my fingers bled. I didn't sleep much. I didn't need to. The job consumed me, the way it always did. The night of the heist, I felt alive. The air was crisp, October chill biting through my black hoodie as I crouched in the woods outside Grayson's estate. The moon was a sliver, barely enough to see by, which was perfect. I'd cut the power to the outer perimeter lights. Nothing major, just enough to make it look like a glitch. The guards wouldn't notice for another 10 minutes, which was all I needed. I moved fast, silent, a shadow among shadows. The side entrance was my way in, a service door with a keypad lock. I'd stolen the code weeks earlier, posing as a maintenance worker. The door clicked open, and I was inside. The house was massive, all marble and glass, like something out of a movie. But it was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that makes your skin crawl. I ignored it. Focus, I told myself. The basement was my target. The safe was exactly where Marcus said it would be, hidden behind a fake wall in a wine cellar. I knelt in front of it, my tools spread out like a surgeon's kit. The lock was a beast, dual authentication, biometric and mechanical. I'd brought a bypass for the fingerprint scanner, a little gadget I'd paid a fortune for on the dark web. The mechanical part was trickier. My hands moved on instinct, feeling the tumblers, listening for the faint clicks. Sweat beaded on my forehead, but I didn't stop. I never stopped. Then I heard it. A creak. Upstairs. Soft, like someone stepping on a loose floorboard. My heart didn't race. I'd trained it not to, but my mind sharpened. The guards weren't due for another patrol for 20 minutes. Grayson was supposed to be out of town. I froze, listening. Nothing. Just the house settling, I told myself. Old mansions like this always make noise. I went back to the safe. The bypass worked. The biometric lock disengaged. Now it was just me and the mechanical tumblers. Click. Click. Almost there. Another creak, louder this time, closer. I glanced at my watch. I was ahead of schedule, but not by much. If someone was in the house, I needed to move faster. The safe opened with a soft hiss, and there it was, the ledger. A plain black notebook, unremarkable except for the weight of what it held. I slipped it into my bag, closed the safe, and reset the lock. No trace, no evidence. That's how I worked. I was about to leave when I heard it again. Footsteps, deliberate, coming down the stairs. I melted into the shadows of the wine cellar, my pulse steady but my mind racing. The door to the cellar opened, and a figure stepped inside. Not a guard. Too small, too cautious. A woman, maybe late 30s, dressed in a silk robe, her hair loose. She didn't turn on the light, which was odd. She just stood there, scanning the room, like she knew something was wrong. I held my breath, my body pressed against the wall. She didn't see me, but she was close, too close. If she took another step, she'd trip over my tools. I didn't know who she was. Grayson's wife? A mistress? Didn't matter. She wasn't supposed to be here. Marcus had sworn the house would be empty. She lingered for what felt like an eternity, then turned and left. I waited until her footsteps faded before I moved. My window was closing. I slipped out of the cellar, up the stairs, and back through the service door. The guards were starting their next patrol as I hit the tree line, disappearing into the night. I should have felt the rush, the high of pulling it off. But something was wrong. That woman, those footsteps, they stuck with me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd missed something, that I'd made a mistake. I delivered the ledger to Marcus the next day, collected my money, and tried to move on. But the unease grew, like a splinter under my skin. A week later, I saw her face on the news. Emily Grayson, Victor's wife. Found dead in their mansion. No signs of forced entry. No suspects. The police called it a robbery gone wrong, but I knew better. I hadn't taken anything else, hadn't left a trace. But someone had been in that house after me. Someone who didn't care about being clean. That's when I realized the job wasn't over. It had only just begun. I didn't sleep that night. Not after seeing Emily Grayson's face on the news, her eyes staring out from a photo that didn't belong on a crime report. She was smiling in it, probably some old headshot from a charity gala or something, the kind of thing rich people do to feel good about themselves. But all I could see was her silhouette in that wine cellar, standing there like she knew I was watching. Like she knew I'd been there. I turned off the TV and sat in the dark, my apartment feeling smaller than it ever had. The bag with my cut $2 million in untraceable cash was stashed under the floorboards, but it didn't feel like a win. It felt like a curse. I kept replaying the job in my head, every step, every second. The creaks. The footsteps. Her. Had she seen me? Had I left something behind? I was ghost. I didn't make mistakes. But the news said she was dead, and the math wasn't adding up. I'm not a good guy. Let's get that straight. I've stolen from people who didn't deserve it, taken things that meant more than money, family heirlooms, keepsakes, stuff you can't replace. But I never hurt anyone. That was my rule. No violence, no blood. Get in, get out, vanish. So why was Emily Grayson dead? And why did it feel like someone was tying up loose ends? I needed answers. Marcus was my first stop. He'd set up the job, fed me the intel, swore the house would be empty. I found him at a warehouse in the south side, one of those places that smells like rust and motor oil. He was counting cash, his bony fingers moving like a spider's legs. When he saw me, his face twitched, just for a second, but I caught it. Fear. Ghost, he said, trying to play it cool. Didn't expect to see you so soon. Job went smooth, right? I didn't sit down. I stood across from him, my hands in my pockets, one of them wrapped around the grip of a switchblade I carried for insurance. Emily Grayson's dead, I said, keeping my voice flat. You want to tell me why? Marcus froze, his eyes darting to the door like he was expecting someone to burst in. What? Dead? That's got nothing to do with us. Us? I stepped closer, letting my shadow fall over him. There's no us, Marcus. You said the house was clear. You said Grayson was out of town. But she was there. In the cellar. And now she's gone. He started babbling, the way people do when they're scared. I didn't know, man. I swear. The client said it was a clean job. Just a ledger. Nobody was supposed to be home. Who's the client? I asked. I'd never cared before, but this was different. This wasn't just a job gone sideways. This was a body. Marcus shook his head, his voice dropping to a whisper. You know I can't tell you that. They'd kill me. I leaned in, close enough to smell the stale coffee on his breath. And what do you think I'll do if you don't? He didn't answer right away. He just stared at me, his eyes wide, like he was seeing something he hadn't noticed before. Maybe it was the way I was standing, or the way my voice didn't waver. I'd always been calm, controlled, but something in me was shifting. I could feel it, like a crack spreading through ice. I was losing my edge, and I didn't like it. "All right," he said finally, his voice barely audible. "I don't know their name. Never do. But they're big. Bigger than Grayson. They wanted that ledger to take him down. That's all I know." "Take him down how?" I pressed. "I don't know, Ghost. I just brokered the deal. You know how it works." I did know. That was the problem. In this game, you're a cog in someone else's machine. You don't ask questions, you don't look too close. But I couldn't let this go. Not with Emily Grayson's face burned into my brain. I left Marcus alive, but I made it clear I'd be back if I found out he was lying. I spent the next few days digging. I hacked into Grayson's financial records, his emails, anything I could find. The ledger was encrypted, and I hadn't kept a copy. Part of being clean is not holding on to evidence. But I remembered enough. Names, dates, accounts. Grayson wasn't just a billionaire. He was a kingpin, moving money through shell companies, bribing politicians, maybe worse. The ledger was a map of his sins, and someone wanted it bad enough to kill for it. But who? And why Emily? She wasn't in the ledger, at least not from what I'd seen. Was she collateral damage? Wrong place, wrong time? Or was she part of something bigger, something I'd walked into blind? I started following Grayson. Not physically, that's amateur hour, but through his digital footprint. He was back in Chicago, acting like nothing had happened. No press conferences, no public grief. Just business as usual. That struck me as odd. If my wife was killed, I'd be a wreck, or at least I'd pretend to be. Grayson was too calm, too collected. It made me wonder if he knew more than he was letting on. Then I got the call. Unknown number, voice distorted, mechanical. "You have something that belongs to us," it said. I gripped the phone, my knuckles white. "I don't have anything. I delivered the ledger." "You saw it," the voice said. "You know too much." I felt a chill, the kind that starts in your bones and spreads. "Who is this?" "Walk away, Ghost. Forget the job. Forget Emily Grayson. Or you'll end up like her." The line went dead. I stood there, staring at my phone, the weight of it all crashing down. I'd been careful my whole career, invisible, untouchable. But now I was exposed, a target. Someone knew I'd been in that house. Someone knew what I'd seen. I should have run. Packed my bags, taken the money, and disappeared. That's what the old me would have done. But the old me was gone. Emily Grayson's death had changed something in me, cracked open a part of my soul I'd kept locked away. Guilt, maybe? Or something darker. I wasn't just a thief anymore. I was a man with blood on his hands, even if I hadn't pulled the trigger. I decided to go back to the mansion. Stupid, I know, but I needed to see it again, to understand what had happened. I waited until midnight, same setup as before, black hoodie, gloves, no trace. The security was tighter now, new cameras, more guards, but I knew the blind spots. I slipped in through the same service door, my heart pounding in a way it never had before. This wasn't a job. This was personal. The house felt different. Colder. The silence was heavier, like it was holding its breath. I made my way to the wine cellar, half expecting to see Emily's ghost waiting for me. The safe was still there, untouched, like nothing had happened. I didn't open it. I just stood there, replaying that night, trying to piece it together. That's when I saw it. A smudge on the floor, near the fake wall. Small, almost invisible, but I'd been trained to notice details. I knelt down, my flashlight catching the faint outline of a footprint. Not mine. Not Emily's. Someone else had been here, someone who'd come after me. I was so focused on the footprint, I didn't hear the door open behind me. Not until it was too late. A shadow moved, fast, and before I could turn, something hard cracked against my skull. The world went black. When I came to, I was tied to a chair in what looked like a storage room. My head throbbed, and my vision was blurry, but I could make out two figures in front of me. One was Marcus, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. The other was a man I didn't recognize, tall, with a face like carved stone. He wore a suit, expensive, the kind Grayson might wear. "You're a hard man to find, Ghost," the suit said, his voice smooth, almost friendly. "But not impossible." I didn't respond. My mouth was dry, and my hands were numb from the ropes. I tested them, just enough to feel the knots. Sloppy work. I could get out given time. "Who are you?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Someone who cleans up messes. You made a big one." "Emily Grayson," I said. It wasn't a question. His smile faded. "She wasn't supposed to be there. Neither were you." I glanced at Marcus, who wouldn't meet my eyes. "You set me up," I said. Marcus flinched. "I didn't have a choice, Ghost. They..." "Enough," the suit snapped. He turned back to me. "You saw the ledger. You know what's in it. That makes you a problem." "I didn't see anything," I lied. "I don't care what's in it." He leaned in, close enough that I could smell his cologne. "You're lying. And liars don't last long." I don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was the pain in my head, or the guilt eating me alive, or just the fact that I was tired of running. But I looked him in the eye and said, "You killed her, didn't you?" For a second, he didn't move. Then he laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "You're smarter than you look. But not smart enough." He nodded to Marcus, who pulled out a gun. My stomach dropped. I'd faced a lot in my career, cops, alarms, double crosses, but never a barrel pointed at my face. Time slowed down. I could hear my own heartbeat, feel the ropes cutting into my wrists. I wasn't ready to die. Not like this. The gun in Marcus's hand trembled, just enough to tell me he didn't want to pull the trigger. His eyes were wide, darting between me and the suit, like a cornered animal looking for a way out. I'd seen that look before, on marks, on rookies, on people who knew they were in too deep. Marcus wasn't a killer. He was a middleman, a coward who hid behind deals and secrets. But the suit? He was different. His eyes were dead, like a shark's, no hesitation, no remorse. He was the one I had to worry about. "Marcus," I said, keeping my voice low, steady, like I was talking him down from a ledge. "You don't want to do this." "Shut up," the suit snapped, not even looking at Marcus. His focus was on me, like he was studying a puzzle he hadn't quite figured out. "You've got a reputation, Ghost. Untouchable. Invisible. But you're not invisible now, are you?" I didn't answer. My hands were working the ropes behind my back, slow, careful, feeling for any give. The knots were sloppy, but I needed time, and time was running out. The storage room smelled of damp concrete and mildew, the kind of place where bodies disappear. I'd been in worse spots, but not by much. "Why Emily?" I asked, not because I expected an answer, but because I needed to keep them talking. Every second they spent explaining was a second I wasn't dead. The suit tilted his head, like he was deciding whether I deserved to know. "She was a loose end," he said finally. "Just like you." "Loose end?" I pressed, my fingers finding a weak spot in the rope. "She didn't know anything. She was just there." He smirked, and it made my skin crawl. "You think you know what happened that night, don't you? You think you're so smart, slipping in and out like a ghost. But you missed something. You always miss something." My stomach twisted. I'd gone over that night 1,000 times, every detail, every sound. The creaks, the footsteps, her silhouette in the cellar. I hadn't missed anything. Had I? The rope loosened slightly, enough to give me hope. I kept my face blank, my eyes locked on the suit. "Tell me," I said. "What did I miss?" He stepped closer, close enough that I could see the faint scar running down his jaw. "Emily wasn't just Grayson's wife. She was his partner. Not in the business sense, not the way you're thinking. She knew about the ledger. She helped him build it." I froze, my fingers pausing on the rope. That didn't make sense. Emily Grayson was a socialite, a trophy wife, always smiling in photos at fundraisers and galas. But then I remembered her in the cellar, the way she'd stood there, not scared, not confused, but searching. Like she knew something was wrong. Like she was protecting something. "You're lying," I said, but my voice wasn't as steady as I wanted it to be. "Am I?" He leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. "She wasn't supposed to be home, but she was. She wasn't supposed to see you, but she did. And when she realized the ledger was gone, she started asking questions. Questions Grayson couldn't answer." I felt sick. The pieces were falling into place, and I didn't like the picture they were forming. "So you killed her," I said. "To keep her quiet." The suit didn't answer, just straightened up and glanced at Marcus. "Do it," he said. Marcus's hand shook harder, the gun wavering. I can't," he stammered. "Ghost, man, I didn't sign up for this." The suit turned on him, fast, like a snake striking. "You're in this, Marcus. You don't get to walk away." I saw my chance. The rope was loose enough now. I twisted my wrist hard and felt it give. One more second, and I'd be free. But before I could move, Marcus made his choice. He dropped the gun, the metal clattering against the concrete floor. "I'm out," he said, backing toward the door. "I'm done." The suit didn't hesitate. He pulled a pistol from his jacket and fired, a single shot, clean through Marcus's chest. Marcus hit the ground, eyes wide, blood pooling under him. I didn't flinch. I couldn't afford to. My hands were free now, but I kept them behind my back, waiting for my moment. The suit turned back to me, his face calm, like he just swatted a fly. "Where were we?" he said, as if nothing had happened. I stared at Marcus's body, the blood spreading like ink on the floor. I'd known he was weak, but I hadn't expected him to die for it. A part of me felt something, guilt, maybe, or pity, but I buried it. I had to focus. The suit was talking again, his voice smooth, almost hypnotic. "You're a problem, Ghost," he said. "But you're also an opportunity. You're good at what you do. Better than most. My employers could use someone like you." I raised an eyebrow, playing along. "Employers? You mean the people who wanted the ledger?" He nodded. "Grayson's out of the picture now. The ledger was the last piece. But there's always more work. More safes. More secrets." I didn't trust him. Not for a second. But I needed to keep him talking, needed to buy time to figure out my next move. "What's in it for me?" I asked. He smiled again, that same cold, empty smile. "You get to live." That was my moment. I lunged, faster than he expected, slamming my shoulder into his chest. The gun went off, the shot wild, hitting the ceiling. We hit the floor hard, grappling, my hands clawing for the pistol. He was strong, stronger than he looked, but I was desperate. I drove my knee into his stomach, heard him grunt, and wrestled the gun free. I didn't think. I just fired. Once, twice, 3 times. He went still, his eyes staring up at nothing. I sat there, panting, the gun heavy in my hand. The room was quiet now, except for the faint drip of blood from Marcus's body. I'd killed a man. First time in 15 years. I'd broken my own rule, and it felt like I'd crossed a line I could never come back from. I didn't have time to process it. I untied the ropes, grabbed the suit's phone, and searched his pockets. A wallet, a key fob, a folded piece of paper with an address scribbled on it. I didn't know what it meant, but I took it all. I wiped the gun for prints, left it on the floor, and slipped out of the storage room. The warehouse was empty, just crates and shadows. I was gone before anyone could find the bodies. The address on the paper led me to a penthouse downtown, one of those glass towers that scream money. I didn't know who lived there, but I had a guess. Victor Grayson. The suit had said Grayson was out of the picture, but I didn't believe it. Men like Grayson don't just disappear. They adapt. They survive. I waited until night, watching the building from a coffee shop across the street. The suit's phone was locked, but I'd cracked worse. It took me an hour to get in, and what I found made my blood run cold. Texts encrypted, but not encrypted enough. Orders to kill Emily. Orders to watch me. And a name, Cassandra. No last name, just Cassandra. The client? The suit's boss? I didn't know, but the texts mentioned a meeting at the penthouse, tonight. I had to go. I had to know who was pulling the strings, who'd turned my life into a nightmare. The penthouse was on the 40th floor, all glass and steel, the kind of place that makes you feel small. I bypassed the lobby security, child's play compared to Grayson's mansion, and took the service elevator. My heart was pounding again, not from fear, but from something else. Anger, maybe? Or desperation. I wasn't Ghost anymore. I was just a man, chasing answers I wasn't sure I wanted. The door to the penthouse was unlocked, which should have been my first warning. I stepped inside, my knife in hand, every nerve on edge. The place was dark, except for a single lamp casting long shadows across the room. And there she was, sitting on a leather couch, a glass of wine in her hand. Emily Grayson. Alive. I froze, my mind refusing to process it. She looked different. Her hair was darker, shorter, but it was her. The same eyes, the same calm confidence I'd seen in the wine cellar. She wasn't a ghost. She wasn't dead. You're a hard man to kill, Ghost, she said, her voice smooth, like she'd been expecting me. I gripped the knife tighter, my head spinning. You're supposed to be dead. She smiled, and it was nothing like the gala photos. It was cold, calculating. That's what they needed to believe. Victor, the police, everyone. I took a step closer, my voice low. What the hell is going on? She set the wine glass down, her movements deliberate. You stole the ledger. You did your job. But you didn't finish it. Finish it? I snapped. I got you the damn book. Then your husband's goons tried to kill me. Victor's not my husband, she said, standing now, her eyes locked on mine. Not anymore. And those weren't his goons. I felt the floor shift under me. Cassandra, I said, the name from the text clicking into place. She nodded. You're smarter than I thought. But not smart enough to walk away. She moved toward a desk, pulling out a laptop. The ledger wasn't just about Victor's deals. It was about mine. My network, my empire. Victor was getting sloppy, drawing too much attention. I needed him gone, and I needed the ledger to do it. You set me up, I said, the truth hitting me like a punch. You used me to take him down. And you did beautifully, she said, her smile widening. But you saw too much. You know too much. And now you're a loose end. I heard the click behind me before I saw the gun. Another man, another suit, stepping out of the shadows. I'd been played, from the start. Emily, or Cassandra, or whatever her name was, hadn't just wanted the ledger. She'd wanted control. And I was just a pawn. The click of the gun behind me was like a switch flipping in my brain. Everything slowed down, the air, my heartbeat, the faint hum of the city outside the penthouse windows. I'd been in tight spots before, but this was different. This wasn't just a job gone wrong. This was a betrayal, a trap I'd walked into with my eyes wide open. Emily Grayson, or Cassandra, as she called herself now, stood there, her smile sharp enough to cut glass, while the man behind me pressed the barrel of his gun against the back of my head. I was still holding my knife, but it was useless. One move, and I'd be dead before I hit the floor. My mind raced, picking apart the last few weeks, the job, the ledger, the bodies piling up. Marcus, bleeding out in that warehouse. The suit, his lifeless eyes staring at the ceiling. And now me, caught in the web of a woman who'd played me from the start. You don't have to do this, I said, my voice steady despite the cold metal against my skull. I don't care about your empire. I don't care about the ledger. Cassandra tilted her head, like she was studying a painting she didn't quite like. That's the problem, Ghost. You're too good at what you do. You don't just steal things. You see things. You remember things. And I can't afford that. I clenched my jaw, my fingers tightening around the knife. So what's the plan? Kill me like you killed Marcus? Like you faked your own death? Her smile faded, just for a second, and I caught a flicker of something in her eyes. Regret, maybe, or just annoyance. You think you've got it all figured out, she said, stepping closer, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. You think I'm the villain here, but you don't know the half of it. Then tell me, I said, leaning into the gun at my head, daring her to keep talking. If I'm gonna die, at least let me know why. She paused, glancing at the man behind me. Hold off, she said, her voice sharp. The pressure of the gun eased, just enough for me to breathe again. She turned back to me, her eyes narrowing. You want the truth? Fine. But it's not going to save you. She walked back to the couch, picking up her wine glass like we were having a casual conversation. Victor wasn't just my husband. He was my partner, in every sense. We built an empire together, money, power, control. But he got greedy. Started making deals behind my back, cutting me out. The ledger wasn't just his. It was ours. Every name, every account, every secret. I couldn't let him have it. So you hired me to steal it, I said, piecing it together. And then what? You framed him for your murder? She laughed, a low, bitter sound. Something like that. Victor's in hiding now, running from the feds, the cartels, everyone he screwed over. The ledger was my insurance policy. With it, I could start over, rebuild without him. But you, she pointed at me, her finger like a blade. You were a complication. You saw me that night. You saw the ledger. And you didn't let it go. I felt the weight of her words, the truth sinking in. I'd been a tool, nothing more. A means to an end. But there was something she wasn't saying, something I could feel in the air, like static before a storm. Why fake your death? I asked. Why not just take the ledger and run? Her expression hardened. Because Victor wasn't the only one with enemies. The people we worked with, the people in that ledger, they don't forgive. They don't forget. Emily Grayson had to die so Cassandra could live. I stared at her, my mind racing. The ledger wasn't just a list of deals. It was a death warrant for her, for Victor, for anyone who touched it. And I'd walked right into it, thinking I was in control. Thinking I was untouchable. You're not going to let me walk out of here, I said, not a question. She shook her head, almost sadly. No. But I'll give you a choice. Work for me, or die here. I laughed, a dry, hollow sound. Work for you? After you set me up? After you had Marcus killed? Marcus was weak, she said, her voice cold. You're not. You're a survivor, Ghost. You could be useful. I didn't answer right away. My fingers were still on the knife, my mind calculating. The man behind me was too close, the gun too steady. But I'd been in worse spots. I just needed an opening. All right, I said, forcing a shrug. What's the job? She raised an eyebrow, surprised but pleased. Smart choice. There's a vault in Zurich. Offshore accounts, documents, things I need to disappear completely. You get in, get them, and I'll make sure you're set for life. I nodded, playing along, my eyes scanning the room. The lamp on the table, the glass walls, the open balcony door letting in a faint breeze. An idea started to form, risky, but possible. And if I say no? I asked, buying time. She sighed, like she was disappointed. Then you're no use to me. That was my cue. I moved, faster than I'd ever moved, twisting my body and driving the knife into the thigh of the man behind me. He screamed, the gun firing wild, shattering a glass wall. I didn't stop. I grabbed his arm, wrenching the gun free, and threw him into Cassandra. They went down in a tangle, her wine glass smashing against the floor. I ran for the balcony. 40 floors up, no time to think. The service elevator was too far, the stairs too slow. I heard shouts behind me, footsteps, another gunshot. I didn't look back. I hit the balcony, climbed the railing, and jumped to the next one over, my hands barely catching the edge. My heart was pounding, my arms burning, but I pulled myself up, rolling onto the neighboring balcony. The penthouse next door was empty, dark. I smashed a glass door with my elbow, slipped inside, and kept moving. I was out of the building in under 5 minutes, my hood up, blending into the late-night crowd on the street. My hands were shaking now, the adrenaline fading, leaving me hollow. I'd survived, but I wasn't free. Cassandra was alive, and she knew I was too. She'd come for me. They always do. I didn't go back to my apartment. Too risky. I ditched the suit's phone in a dumpster, wiped clean, and used the cash from my stash to buy a burner. I needed to disappear, but first, I needed to know how deep this went. I found a motel on the edge of the city, the kind of place where nobody asks questions, and started digging. The address from the suit's pocket, the texts, anything that could lead me to the truth. The next few days were a blur. I barely slept, barely ate. I hacked into databases, followed leads, pieced together what I could. Cassandra wasn't just a scorned wife or a criminal mastermind. She was connected. Cartels, politicians, people who could make entire cities disappear if they wanted to. The ledger was her leverage, her way of keeping them in line. But there was something else, something I hadn't seen coming. One of the texts on the suit's phone mentioned a name, Daniel Pierce. A nobody, or so I thought, until I ran it through every database I could access. Pierce was a journalist, a small-time investigative reporter who'd been sniffing around Grayson's empire for years. He'd been asking questions about offshore accounts, shell companies, the same stuff in the ledger. And then, 6 months ago, he'd vanished. No body, no trace, just gone. I found his last known address, a rundown apartment in a part of Chicago where even the rats move in pairs. I broke in, expecting nothing, but what I found stopped me cold. A wall covered in notes, photos, documents. Victor Grayson's face, Cassandra's face, names I recognized from the ledger. And in the center, a grainy photo of me, taken the night of the heist. I hadn't even known I'd been seen. Pierce had been onto something. He'd been tracking the same web I'd stumbled into, and it had gotten him killed. I tore through his notes, my hands shaking. One word kept coming up, Sentinel. A code name maybe, or a project. Whatever it was big, bigger than Grayson, bigger than Cassandra. A network of power that stretched across continents, and the ledger was the key to controlling it. I should have walked away. Burned the notes, left the city, disappeared. But I couldn't. Not after Marcus. Not after Emily, or Cassandra, or whoever she was. Not after Pierce. I'd spent my life taking things that didn't belong to me, but this was different. This was about truth, or maybe revenge. I wasn't sure anymore. I tracked Cassandra to a private airstrip outside the city. She was leaving, starting over, just like she'd said. I didn't have a plan, not really, just a knife, a gun I'd taken from the suit, and a burning need to end this. The airstrip was quiet, just a single jet waiting in the dark, its engines humming. I saw her, standing by the plane, talking to a man in a pilot's uniform. No guards, no backup. She thought she was safe. I moved fast, silent, the way I always did. But this time, I wasn't stealing. I was hunting. I got within 10 feet before she saw me, her eyes widening. "Ghost," she said, her voice calm but laced with something new. Fear. "You didn't think I'd let you go, did you?" I said, stepping into the light, the gun in my hand. She raised her hands, slow, deliberate. "You don't want to do this. You kill me, and you'll have nowhere to run. They'll find you. They always do. Who's they? I demanded, my finger on the trigger. Sentinel? The people in the ledger? Her face changed, just for a second, and I knew I'd hit something. You don't know what you're talking about, she said, but her voice was tight. Then tell me, I said, stepping closer. Tell me, or I end this now. She stared at me, her eyes searching mine, like she was looking for the man I used to be. The thief, the ghost, the one who didn't care. But that man was gone. She saw it, and her shoulders sagged, just a fraction. Sentinel isn't a person, she said. It's a system. A network. People like Victor, like me, we're just pieces. The ledger keeps it all together. Without it, they lose control. And you thought you could take it, I said. Use it to run your own game. She didn't deny it. I was tired of being a pawn. I wanted to be a queen. I laughed, bitter cold. And I was what? Collateral damage? You were a means to an end, she said, no apology in her voice. But you're still here. That's more than most. I wanted to pull the trigger. I wanted to end her, to wipe that smug look off her face. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the weight of what I'd already done, the blood on my hands. Maybe it was the realization that killing her wouldn't fix anything. The ledger was out there, and so was Sentinel. Killing her wouldn't make me free. I lowered the gun, just enough to make her think I was backing off. Walk away, I said. Get on that plane, and don't come back. She stared at me, surprised, then nodded. You're making a mistake, she said, turning toward the jet. Maybe I was, but I'd made worse. I watched her board the plane, the door closing behind her. I didn't move until the jet was in the air, disappearing into the night. Then I walked away, back into the shadows, where I belong. That was 3 years ago. I don't steal anymore. I don't sleep much either. I move from city to city, never staying long, always looking over my shoulder. The money's gone, most of it donated, some of it burned. I couldn't keep it. It felt dirty, like it was stained with blood. I still see Cassandra's face sometimes, in nightmares, in reflections. I don't know where she is, or if she's still alive. I don't know if Sentinel's coming for me, or if they've forgotten I exist. But I know one thing, I'm not Ghost anymore. That part of me died the night I took the ledger, the night I crossed a line I can't uncross. I'm telling you this because I need you to understand. No matter how good you are, how careful, how untouchable, there's always a price. I paid mine, and it cost me everything. My name, my life, my soul. If you're out there, thinking you can play the game and walk away clean, you're wrong. The shadows don't let you go. They follow you forever. And sometimes, late at night, when the world is quiet, I hear them whispering my name.